If you want to get a query critiqued but you do not want to pay for it, you can get it done for free, but it will be out here public on my TikTok channel. My name is Gina. I'm an author, editor, publishing professional. I help you make your writing better. I do intend for these to be constructive. I am not out here to mock anybody. We are all on a journey. We are all learning. There is a real live person on the other side of this query, and so everybody needs to keep that in mind. We are being constructive, not destructive, when we are trying to offer advice here. Okay, so let's dive in. 134,000 word familial high fantasy epic. So word count is high, not impossibly so if this is adult fiction, but we do not know if this is adult fiction. It doesn't say. So this is high. If the rest of this is perfect, an agent might say, you know what, I can probably help them shave this down to like 125 and we can get it where it needs to be for an adult fantasy, but we do not know that this is adult fantasy. A familial high fantasy epic. Familial doesn't need to be there. That's not really doing anything. High fantasy epic is also like, yeah, I mean, those two do mean technically two different things. One of them describes like the way the magic system interacts with the rest of the world, and one of them describes the scope of the story. This tells me, oh, there it is. Yep, first novel in a trilogy. So this person is coming out as a debut author who is writing epic fantasy in a trilogy with just a ton of words to it. This is going to be a difficult sell. The rest of this needs to be absolutely perfect for you to get anywhere with this. Okay, many years ago, and there we go. Okay, so this is a problem that happens a lot in fantasy novels. I do see it pop up in other genres as well occasionally, but it is a very, very common issue when people are writing fantasy that they're going to bog the query down and the synopsis, and usually this means that your first like 3 chapters are all just full of backstory. But we come to story for character. We need to know stakes. We need to know why we're going to care about this character and about this person. Even if you are the type of person who reads a story to be totally and completely immersed in a second world, you care about a character, you care about what is at stake for them. So starting with a bunch of backstory, this sends a signal to an agent or an editor that your first few chapters are going to be a bunch of backstory. You probably have a prologue that was set like 50 years ago or even 100 years ago, telling about like where all of the people came from in this world. That is a big red flag, especially when we were talking about trilogy, high word count, redundancy in the genre up here. This means like this is probably very overwritten, that we have a lot of stuff in the story that does not need to be, especially does not need to be where it is. Okay, so then I'm actually, like the rest of this sounds pretty cool. Like this sounds like a neat, cool concept, but this does not belong in a query letter, so I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on that. That first paragraph doesn't belong in a query letter, so we're going to skip to the second one. All right, almost a century later, there we go. We are now getting to the actual story. Hollow Green tells the story of Damon, the young suppressor. Okay, so you already know what the name of the story is, so we want to start with Damon, a young suppressor. So his story begins as his home city burns down. Oh, so this is more backstory. He witnessed his father's death, the hand of another worldly figure, enchanted mask. How does he know that it is enchanted? This is all backstory. This is all stuff that kind of like happened to set up the story. I need to know 5 things at the end of a query letter. Who is our main character? What do they want? What is standing in their way? What are they willing to do to get it? And what happens if they fail? Okay, so this supernatural creature tells him that he cannot escape his fate. He has nowhere to run, but he flees anyway. Okay, we have a chosen one trope. People really love chosen one tropes. That's great. This is all up to this point. This is backstory. This is taking us to like the very beginning of the story. We have not gotten to the query letter. We do not know anything really about our character. We do not actually know what is at stake here. Okay, I got a second screen grab because this one was really long. So we have all of that backstory setting up the fact that we have a chosen one trope here. So meanwhile, the high angel waits with bated breath for his return. They are connected by a prophecy that precedes him. Again, chosen one trope. He believes he must sacrifice Damon. So again, this is sort of like our antagonist. This is not actually talking to us about our protagonist and our main character and what they need to do. They are haunted by visions of each other. They are cosmically linked across space and time. So this all sounds like cool and fun and interesting, but we don't have a story here. We don't have anything at stake. And now here we are, we finally get to a paragraph that is about the stakes and about this character. So he starts to realize his destiny, understands his past is not as simple as it once appeared. He embarks on a mission with his friends, uncovers terrible secrets concerning his family, how they intertwine with another family. The lines between good and evil are not so easily drawn, and looking inside himself, he has the power all along. All of these things, right? This is all stuff that fantasy readers really love. We love a chosen one trope. We love secrets buried long and in the past. We love a family interconnected, complex stuff. Like all of these things things are tropes that fantasy lovers really, really love reading. It is also very usual. This is not telling me anything distinct or specific or like intriguing about this story specifically. This is just telling us like, hey, we have a second world epic fantasy. Hey, we have a chosen one trope. That's all that this query letter has done, and it's used a lot of words to do it. So if we look at those 5 questions that we're hoping to have answered, who is our main character? Damon. Okay, so we know who our main character is. What is it that he wants? Unclear what it is he wants. We kind of know what like needs to happen a little bit, but we don't know what it is that he wants. We don't know what his goals are. Like to realize his destiny, I don't know what that means. I don't know what his destiny is. I don't know how he's going to realize it. I don't know how he's going to fulfill it. I don't have any stakes for him. What is standing in his way? We have the high angel. They are connected to each other. There's an antagonistic relationship there. So I have a piece of that is there, but that needs to be more clearly spelled out. What are they willing to do to get it? Very, very unclear. We like embark on a mission. We have our friends. We uncover some secrets, but I don't understand like why he's doing these things specifically to reach his goal. I don't understand why these are the things that are the barriers to his goal. None of that is tied together very clearly. It's all very, very vague. It's all very non-specific. This is a little like when you say, hey, I've got a young orphan boy who was raised by his uncle, but never realized that inside him he was the most powerful being and was able to take down the Dark Lord of the universe in a way that nobody else could. What story am I describing? Is that Lord of the Rings, or is that Star Wars, or is that Harry Potter? Right? That's kind of what we are doing is the same thing here, where we have like stripped off all of the specifics and all of the things that make it unique and interesting, and we have stripped it down to its bare bones, and it's just a trope here. And then I do want to talk about the comps that are used in the bottom paragraph here. So resonate with fans of the Vicious and Vengeful duology. That is not an epic fantasy. That is not a high fantasy, and so this is wrong genre. It's also a huge, massive bestseller. If you're going to comp to Victoria Schwab, maybe this is the right one to do it, but this is a huge, massive best-selling author, and this is the wrong genre. And Vicious came out like 15 years ago, 10 years ago. That's way too old to be using that as a comp. Raven Boys is young adult. It is also not an epic fantasy. And it is also quite old. Those ones were like 2010, 11, 12. So those are too old to be using as a comp, wrong category, wrong genre. And Mortal Instruments, also too old, wrong genre, wrong category. These are paranormal or urban fantasy, like paranormal romance and urban fantasy kind of intertwined together. Raven Boys is a contemporary fantasy. Vicious Vengeful is like, I would call it like a speculative fiction, like fantasy with teeth, like a horror adjacent kind of like tragedy story. So these are all wrong genre, too old, too big. I mean, these were made into TV shows and movies. These are huge New York Times bestsellers, and they're too old. They were the wrong categories. So I think we have a really good example here of this person knows and understands what the fantasy market wants. They know what their audience is. They know what type of stories they want to be reading. They understand their stories. They understand the tropes and the things that people in this market are looking for. But with that high word count and an unclear genre, and then these comps down here that demonstrate that we don't understand genre or category, and then all of this backstory, this tells me that the book is probably overwritten, that this book probably starts in the wrong place, probably has a big prologue that doesn't need to be there, probably spends a lot of time on backstory and explaining the politics of this world rather than focusing on character and the plot moving forward in a way that is immersive and interesting to the reader. Sometimes these query letters are like, there's something in the query letter that is making agents not pick up the book, and then oftentimes the query letter points to other issues that are in the manuscript itself, and this is one of those times. I am going to guess that this manuscript might need more revision. It might not. This might be a case of you just hadn't done a query letter before and this is your first attempt at that, and that's why we have so much backstory here. And if that's the case, then you are very, very confident that the manuscript is ready. That's great. But this is pointing out a couple of things that agents and editors see often that go along with a book that is overwritten and is too focused. It has the camera pointing in the wrong place. Here we're going to need to focus it in on character and not so much on the world building and the backstory, even though this concept sounds really cool and fun and interesting. And if you are able to develop it in a way that is immersive, it's going to be a total banger.